What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. As you guys can tell, we have the old G35 back in the garage. The reason this car is back is because we have a leak coming from the high pressure hose on the power steering system. So in today's video, I'm going to show you guys how it's done, and I hope you guys are able to replace your power steering on your car as well. If you guys recall, I traded that vehicle for this car that's in front of me. Now this car is pretty much in parts, but it is going to be useful so that I can demonstrate what needs to be done. So very quickly, you want to remove this 24mm fastener holding down the high pressure line. Then you're going to want to remove this bracket on the side of the engine bay right here. There is 2 10s on the bottom, but those are actually pretty hard to get to with the engine in the way. There's not enough clearance, but there is another 10mm fastener on the top right there, kind of in the middle, that clamps them down. You can remove that with the gear wrench. You will also have another clamp in the middle right there that is held down by one 10mm fastener. The last thing you'll do is remove the 14mm nut that holds the line to the rack and pinion. So these are some of the tools you're going to need to do this job. A 10mm gear wrench. I suggest 10mm gear wrench because it's going to make it a lot easier. 14mm flare wrench. You also need a 24mm to remove the nut, or the bolt I should say, that holds the power steering to the pump. You're going to go ahead and also use a ratchet or a brake bar to remove that bolt. Flashlight is also useful. You will also need an extension and a 27mm socket. Drip pan to catch all the remaining fluid. So we're gonna go ahead and get this guy done. So what I recommend for you to do first is to drain the power steering fluid. I wouldn't bother trying to suck this up with like a turkey baster or something like that. What I recommend is, once you have your vehicle lifted up and supported by jack stands, is to go here to the driver's side, get that 14mm flare wrench, loosen up that fitting, and then it's gonna drain from that point. That's better in my opinion because you don't mess around with this, and gravity will bring down all the fluid to that end right there. So it should drain everything from your pump. You guys can even go a step further. Once you have that cracked loose right there, go ahead and give the car a quick crank. It's going to turn the power steering pump on, and it's going to push all the fluid from the pump out, and it's going to give you a good flush. That's what I would recommend. So on the driver's side, you guys will look up and see the Hardline right here. So you want to go ahead and get your 14mm. Go ahead and break this guy loose, and then all the fluid will drain right here on your drip pan. This will minimize the mess, and in my opinion, it's a lot faster. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. We're gonna go ahead and let that drain, and we're gonna focus on removing this fastener that holds down the high pressure line to this little bracket. So the nut is actually on the other side, or I should say the bolt. So get the gear wrench and break this guy off so that you can slide this connection from right here. So we have this loose right here. The other thing that we need to remove is the other fastener that's holding the hose to this little bracket up here. If you guys remember, there's a little 10mm holding it on, and it's kind of hard to see, and it's going to be kind of hard to get to, but you should be able to do it. Just get your 10mm gear wrench, go ahead and remove that bolt that goes through the bracket that holds this guy on. Once you do that, you want to go ahead and disconnect the sensor connection, which is right there, all you got to do is just depress it, and then you're gonna go ahead and go above and remove the bolt that holds the line to the pump. So as you can see, I have the hose free. I did find it easier to go behind here on the passenger side and just stick my hand behind the power steering rack and put the gear wrench through here. I found that to be a lot easier, and I was able to get off the bolt without trouble. The hard part is putting it back on because as you can see, it's going to be a little challenging, but we'll figure that out as we go along. What I'll do now is disconnect that connection to the sensor on the hose. So just depress the tab and pull it out. There we go. So now what we have to do is remove the fastener, which is a 24 millimeter. Gonna go ahead and do that now. I needed to use an extension so that I had enough clearance. So I'm gonna go ahead and just break this guy loose here. This 24 millimeter fastener is gonna be on there pretty tight, so I recommend getting a breaker bar to break it loose. So there is 2 washers, one on the bottom and one on the top. Make sure that you don't lose them. It's recommended to replace them, but you don't have to do it. I've reused them in the past and they haven't leaked, but it's always best practice to replace. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this hose out. To remove the hose, just push it down and sneak it out from the bottom. So now that you have your power steering hose loose, here comes the hard part, and that is to remove it. It wraps underneath the engine bay, so it is kind of difficult to remove, but what I found to be easy to do is to remove it from the back of the engine. I recommend disconnecting your crankshaft sensor, or maybe just removing it all together, because you guys can see this line will make contact with it and you don't want to break it. So go ahead and remove this guy so that it's easier to remove. Once you do that, you should be able to kind of like sneak it towards the back of the engine bay, and you should be able to remove the line that way. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys here how you do that. As you guys can see, I need to remove the crankshaft sensor, or at least disconnect it so that it doesn't make contact right here. And we'll go ahead and bend the line a little bit so that it goes over it like that, clears it, and I'm basically pushing it out the back, and it should come out. As you can see, I already have it kind of removed right here. I'm gonna go ahead and just sneak it towards the back. And there you guys have it. It's pretty much out. There we go. So right here we have the hose that we just took off, and right over here there is a little cut in the rubber. Right here is where it's leaking from. So what I'll do here is just transfer this sensor, transfer this guy over to the new hose, which is an OEM hose that's in good shape. I'm gonna go ahead and put that on, fix the issue. If your replacement hose doesn't come with the sensor, you're gonna have to transfer it over. This right here is a 27 millimeter. I'm gonna go ahead and use that to transfer the sensor over to the hose that I'm gonna be installing. So this is the hose that we're gonna be installing. As you can tell, it's dry, it doesn't have any cracks, it's not leaking. This is how it's gonna go back inside. So going underneath, you're gonna sneak it in like this. So first, sneak this guy through the motor mount / header, and then you're gonna slowly push it over here, and then you'll make sure that this also clears. Once it's all in, you'll tilt this up, and then you'll pull it in, and that's the way to install it without removing any further things. So I'm gonna go ahead and install this guy on and put everything back together. So I put everything back together, fastened down the fastener there, the hose is installed. All I need to do is just fill it up with power steering fluid and just check for any leaks if it has any, but I think everything should be good. One thing I will say, the hardest part about this job is going to be putting these brackets back on, especially on the power steering high pressure hose. It is going to be very difficult. If you guys can't get it back on, what I suggest is maybe putting some zip ties to hold it in place. I was able to put it back on, but I really struggled to do it. Alright guys, so that's pretty much going to wrap up the end of today's video. If you guys did find it entertaining and useful, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Consider subscribing for more G35 content coming your way. Follow me on Instagram at Eric's DIY Garage, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Peace out.